Man, finally.
How many years in the make? Excessively, we take classes, we train. You're gonna go super fast, super fast, super fast, going slow because they want to control it. All I want to do is fold origami. So it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Calligraphy Masters podcast. I'm super hyped about today's guest because we've been trying to do this podcast for more than 2 years. Every time that we're about to record it, something happens. But anyways, he's a master in Spencerian. He's the one who started the foiled calligraphy.
And foiling, I call it.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have on the podcast Mike Ward. Hi, bro. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Good to finally be here.
Yes, this is crazy. Yeah, it's long time in the making, and to be honest, I usually don't make podcasts around this time because it is right now. It's 11 p.m. here.
Sorry
So
to keep you up.
no, it's okay, man. It's a good sacrifice. I'm really happy to have you finally on the podcast. And to be honest, this is the first time I see you, like
This is the
your
first time
face.
we've ever spoken without
Yeah,
I think we've talked on the phone, I think, or we did like a phone or
yeah.
something interview a while ago, but this is the first time we've actually spoken almost face to face, as close as we can get.
I mean, I couldn't catch you in Germany like you were
One
some
day,
months
I
ago.
was so sad that I couldn't be at the anniversary, dude, because I was there
Dude,
because I was there not long. I feel like every time I'm in Germany right before the anniversary, because when the anniversary happens, my life is busy and I'm never able because like Adam every year is like, oh, you gotta come back, like you gotta be there, and I obviously want to. It's that that number of weeks is just impossible for my life, and I hate it because I'm always there either historically like right before you or right after you every single time, like for
well,
years.
look, we finally catch each other on a podcast. Probably soon we'll catch each other in life, man.
It'll happen. We'll make it happen.
Okay, bro. So, like, yeah, I've been following you for a long time. Like, yeah, I've been chasing you for 2, 3 years, but I've been following you for a long time, man. You're like one of the people that I started following the first probably 2, 3, 4 years into calligraphy masters. And
Yeah, because Calligraphy Masters started in what, like 2014? Is that right? Yeah,
2014.
I guess
Yeah,
10-year
yeah.
anniversary. And I started. When did Instagram become a thing? Like
I don't
2000.
know. I don't know. I guess somewhere between 2012, 2013. I'm not sure. Might be a bit
I,
earlier.
I think my first IAMPITH convention was 2013 or 14, and Instagram had started just before that because I can remember like 5 calligraphers that I knew that were on Instagram in the very beginning. Um, and that wasn't super long before I mean Calligraphy Master started not long after Instagram.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been time flies. Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're here to talk about you. And to start with, can you tell me a bit more about you? How did you start interested in calligraphy?
So where am I from? I currently live in Vancouver, Canada. I'm in West Canada. I did when I started my sort of calligraphy penmanship journey. I was living in Los Angeles, but I am Canadian. I'm a farm boy from Canada originally. Ask how old I am. I am 40 years old. 40 years
What?
young, I'll say. Yeah, I'm
Really?
probably a little older than most people assume I am. But yeah, I'm 40. Gonna be 41 in a few months, I guess.
You look
Um,
younger to me, dude.
I'll take it. Thank you very much.
Of
I
course.
mean, I blame that on just being silly and being a dancer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're a dancer. And we're gonna speak about this. But it's funny because, like, yeah, 30 minutes ago, I just recorded another podcast, and
Busy day.
the dude was also like looking young, and he said, probably calligraphy keeps us younger.
Calligraphy keeps us young, man. Yep, I
Yeah.
believe it.
So when exactly did you start your interest for calligraphy, and did you know about calligraphy throughout your life? Because I know in America you had it in the schools, but for example, me, I found out calligraphy when I was 23. Before this, I didn't know that even existed.
Got you. So when I was probably like 14 years old, 13 or 14, like calligraphy is not something I ever learned in school. Some schools probably have it. It was never something that was in my school. But I don't remember where I first got exposed to it, but in like an art shop, we had like it would have been just like the Speedball calligraphy sets. And I remember, I always say everybody that I knew were all like somewhat artistic kids go through a calligraphy phase at some point in their life. It's like the people go through origami phases, they go through a calligraphy phase. Kids just have like phases that they do. All kids, I feel like, do it. They may not, but that's kind of how I feel. So when I was like 13 or 14, I got into just very like loose, I guess it would be what we like a black letter type of script just with a broad pen. I remember doing a school assignment where me and a friend had to write a story where we were like shipwrecked, and we were our notes, we had like tea stained the pages and burnt the edges, and I did it with my calligraphy pen and whatnot. But that was relatively short lived as far as the calligraphy side of things. I've always been on the artistic side of like always in the art classes and painting and that kind of stuff, but more so for painting and digital art and things like that. And then around like 2009 or 10, I got into fountain pens. For whatever reason, it had nothing to do with like calligraphy or penmanship. I just got into the contraptions that I found. I liked vintage things and I liked fountain pens. They were just little cool gadgets. Basically anything that's a gadget, I'm a fan of. So I got into fountain pens. I started collecting and restoring a lot of vintage fountain pens. And then being a dancer, I had a lot of friends that were traveling on like cruise ships or things like that. All my friends were very spread out, and I had started my sort of traveling. So I started just writing letters to people because emails, I hated emails. I didn't like digital communication that way. So I started writing letters. And I wanted to improve my handwriting, so I did what everybody does to improve their handwriting. And luckily, Google existed at that point, or some other search engine if it was before that, I don't remember. But looked up like how to improve your handwriting, and I found the IAMPITH website. Um, and then found the old books. I didn't know it was an association or anything you join. I just found an old book and started just, I think it was just Palmer method, just started practicing very casually just to improve my like correspondence. And then that's what I've always called anytime somebody asks, that's my rabbit hole. When I started, I practiced Palmer method very loosely, and then I discovered pointed pen shaded scripts like Spencerian and ornamental penmanship, and that's when I slipped and I fell down the hole, and I've been, well, let's say, happily falling ever since, endlessly.
At what age was this?
That probably would have been however old I was in, say, 2000 and like 11 or 12, somewhere around there. So I would
Okay,
have been
so like 12,
like
13
26.
years ago.
Yeah.
So you started with iPad, but was this the moment where you knew that this is something that you want to do for the rest of your life, or to be at least part of it?
Honestly, I can't really say that there I could pinpoint a point where it was like, this is what I'm gonna do. Or like I'd never made the decision to have like a business or to be a teacher or any of the things. It was literally like I fell in love with doing drills, just like
Mm-hmm.
practicing. Like a dancer, we obsessively we take classes, we train. It's not necessarily for the end goal. We just train because it's what we like to do. So that's where, like, after we'll say a long day, I'm an artist, so I can't say I have hard work days, but after if a tiring day or whatnot, I would come home and like the 30 minutes to an hour before I went to bed was just play some like chill classical or whatever music and just sort of like write a letter or just practice. And it was my like come down after a day. It was my sort of relax rest before I went to bed. And then I just did that more and more and more for a number of years. Again, really casually. Like I would go weeks without writing, and some days then I would sit down and just come back to the desk. And then it just sort of grew and grew until one day I attended my first IAMPITH convention, and somebody asked me, hey, would you ever consider flying to Hong Kong and teaching a class? This was Kahlo from Kahlo Make Art in Hong Kong. She just would ask that. And I had never known, like prior to this convention, I never knew the penmanship world, the calligraphy world, that writing could be a business, that people traveled and taught this stuff. No idea. But when she asked that question, the parallels to my current world in the dance world, because traveling and teaching and performing was what I did all the time. So my life is used to somebody saying, hey, do you want to fly here, or can we fly you here so you teach a class? I say yes. They book the ticket. I fly, I teach, I come home with dance. And then there was a point where just penmanship and calligraphy just started doing that without any, like, I didn't have a website, I didn't have a business model. I posted and shared stuff on Instagram because it was fun, along with my dance and other stuff. And it just kind of, it was all dance, and then penmanship just kind of like sprinkled in, and then they both just kind of rode together randomly. So there was never a start. It was more of a snowball. It just kind of grew until one day I woke up and went, wow, this took over. Now this is, I don't have time to dance and do the stuff, as much stuff as I used to do. I don't audition anymore because I do this.
Before this convention, were you using only books and were you totally self-taught, or did you attend some workshops and classes with other masters?
Before my first convention, I had only attended one class. So for the first couple years when I was practicing, I was just using the books that were on the IAMPITH website. That was it. Just like the business penmanship books and the old ornamental penmanship books. And Michael Saul had a book. He was my one sort of connection, physical, with an actual person connection to the penmanship world. Every year, I was living in Los Angeles, I would go to the LA Pen Show because was a fountain pen collector and restorer and all that. So I would go to the pen show. I knew all the people in that community, and Michael Saul would go to that show and write names and everything for people that attended the show. So that's where I met him in person. I had read his name online before, but that's where I met him in person, got to know him. I got one of his books, and then that's what I used. So for a long time, it was just out of the books. And then I think it was the same year that I attended my first IAMPITH convention. He did a mini, like, I think it was 4-person workshop in Janet Takahashi's living room. That's where he stayed when he came to the LA Pen Show. He stayed with them in their place in California. And they taught just like a little private, like Chinlong was there, open ink stand. That's where we sort of met for the first time in person. But it was like 4 people in the living room. There happened to be an opening, and I was talking to Mike, and he asked me if I wanted to go. So I went, spent like an afternoon basically just going through Spencerian, doing what I now know is the standard structure of a Spencerian or a penmanship class. But we did that, and then I believe it was that same year when I went to IAMPITH and attended my first conference. And then it's been a lot of classes, but most of the learning was just by the books.
You mentioned like twice about fountain pens. Were you using in this period only fountain pens, or you were writing with pointed nibs as well?
So when I first started practice, I was using fountain pens.
Okay.
But then one night, it was when I discovered Spencerian. I don't like to flex fountain pens. I know I own flexible fountain pens, and they're nice ones, vintage ones, new ones. But something about, because the oblique holder exists for a reason. I don't like flexing a fountain pen, even if it's a beautiful flex. So when I discovered Spencerian, that's when I got my first oblique holder. And then so I was only using an oblique holder. I had one oblique holder at the time, and that was just the only tool that I was using for a number of years.
Was it just some basic oblique holder, or
No,
was
it
it
was,
made?
luckily, my first oblique holder was a Michael Saul holder. I bought it from him at the LA Pen Show. I
Okay.
am one of the people that actively try to convince people to not use certain oblique holders.
Like what?
I don't want to. I love the company, but the Speedball holder, the Speedball oblique holder, the black
No,
one, not a fan. It's every calligrapher has one. I've used them.
I have one also.
I have one in a drawer here, and it's probably in one of those drawers somewhere. But I remember like trying to melt one once upon a time to try to make it be arranged better. It's just it lines the nib up in a way that's not it's counterproductive or counter sort of helpful. It's not helpful. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
how Adam Tails One and I got to know each other because he was
Okay.
using one on Instagram in the early days, and I messaged him and said, "Please use a new tool because you're too good to be using this tool." So that was our first sort of, other than we liked each other's stuff and whatnot, but that was our first like communication before now we're like extremely good friends. But that's sort of how
Oh,
it all started.
yeah.
I
And
love Speedball. I just not a huge fan of the plastic black holder. So
yeah, fair enough. And come on, like this is a constructive critique. I mean, if somebody from Speedball is listening or watching, at least they know they have something to improve.
I've told
Uh,
them. They know it. I've spoken with them a number of times. But
so
it's
it's all good.
for other use cases, I'm not blind also to the fact that there are, like in the comic world, and there are people who use it to great effect and it works. It's for specifically ornamental penmanship. I don't think it's good. It serves a purpose and a lot of people really like it. So if you like it, use it. There's nothing wrong with it. If it's the best tool is the one that works for you. So it's if you use it, use it. But if you're wanting me to help you with ornamental penmanship or Spencerian, I'll probably guide you not to another expense. Speedball has other options that aren't hardly more expensive at all. They're still plastic in there, but they're better, I think.
Yeah. What were the nibs that you were using in the beginning? Because you said you started with Spencerian. Are there any
Yeah.
specific nibs that are good for beginning Spencerian?
So the first thing I used was the Nico G was my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
That was the nib that was recommended to me. It's probably one of the only nibs that I used for a number of years. Um, for what people see of mine on Instagram now, I write very fast. I do movement writing, so I require a nib that is more easy to flex than a Nico G. But
Mm-hmm.
once upon a time, and my foundation in penmanship and whatnot was with slower writing. I wrote Spencerian and ornamental penmanship at a slow speed for a number of years. So the Nico G was a really good tool for me. There's one always on my desk chilling here. But because of the speed I use now, I don't use the Nico G as much as I used to.
Which is the correct speed for a Spencerian script? Is it supposed to be written more slowly or faster? Because I've spoken with Paul Antonio about this, and he told me that certain scripts they have certain what do you call it, speed that you write with. I
Right.
mean, some scripts you have to write them faster, others you cannot write them so fast. So how is it with Spencerian?
I would say, like, I know just like in broad pen scripts and whatnot, there are certain strokes, like certain flicks and whatnot, that genuinely require, like, you can't do them slow at all because you'll just get a blob of ink or something like that. But with Spencerian and ornamental penmanship, it's an interesting answer because the answer to what's the proper speed is basically it relies on what you're trying to get out of it or what your target is. Like for me personally, right now, my target is to do historically accurate, um, beautiful flowing ornamental penmanship. And the only way to acquire that or to do that is with a good amount of speed. I like to call it movement more so than speed because it's not the speed that's important. It's you just have to go fast enough that you get a fluidity of line. That's what's important. Um, so if you want to achieve what I'm trying to achieve, I will say it's impossible to go slowly. But if your goal is um, more about the structure of the forms and you're less tied to the perfect, elegant, beautiful hairline, and it's more about the overall shape, then you can do it at a slower speed, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are people that will say one is correct, one is not correct, or one is correct and one is not correct, but really, they're just, I kind of think of them as there's a slow version of Spencerian and ornamental penmanship, and there's a fast version. Hairlines look different is the only real difference, and you'll have more control and you can get more sort of symmetry and perfection going slower, but your hairlines are never going to look like when you go fast. And in a perfect world, I would get good enough at going fast where I could have the control that I have slow and get this amazing masterful writing, but I'm not there yet. Maybe one day.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't think there's a perfect speed. It's whatever is it depends on what somebody's goal is, basically.
How much time passed before you felt that you're handling the script well?
Um, this is gonna sound cocky, and I don't mean it to, but honestly, not it. I never felt like a huge hurdle. Um, Coming from like relatively artistic background and with Spencerian and whatnot, it's very flowy, and so the musculature of the body and whatnot. I don't know if coming from a dancer background helped that, but I felt relatively proficient pretty early on. Was my writing good pretty early on? Not really, but that's one of my favorite things about Spencerian and about basically writing calligraphy in general. As my eye got better, I got better. So in the beginning, I never felt like, oh, this is crap. I felt good. I was stoked on what I was making. Fast forward a few months, it was way better than what that was, but I was stoked on what I was making. Fast forward to like today, that is garbage, but I was stoked on it then, so I never think of what I made back then as garbage because it was exactly what I thought I was trying to create at the time. My eye has just got way more critical and way more specific, so I've sort of grown with that. So there was never really a point where I felt like I've made it. It was just a snowball sort type of thing. It's like the penmanship journey. It just kind of I grew with it, I guess. Which I think that's kind of unique. I don't hear a lot of people sharing stories like that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's why we have the podcast to find all the stories. Okay, and Theo Swan has told me not once that probably he doesn't know other person that dedicates so much time on drills. And is it only you that spend this much time on drills, or is it part of being good in Spencerian?
No, there are people that are better than me that dedicate more time to the drills. Um, I don't you don't have to dedicate the time. Well, there's a balance there. If you only do drills, there's a limitation to how much it will help the writing. But my sort of philosophy getting into it is, and I say this in all of my videos and whatnot, is to fall in love with the process. I
Mhm.
fell in love with the basically the art of doing drills and practicing. So when I sit down, the drills sometimes they're warm up, sometimes they're just this is what I'm working on. I'm just working on this movement till it feels comfortable, being very tuned in to what my body feels like when I'm writing. And then those drills translate to the same sort of comfortability in writing. Um, but I'm not the only one who dedicates this much time. There are people who dedicate much more time than I do, that are more sort of disciplined in their nightly practice routines. I wish I was more disciplined that way, but I never have been. I take unintentional breaks a lot just because I get busy with other things. And when I want to write, I write. And sometimes that session will be like an hour, sometimes it'll be 6 hours. Um, but when I don't, well, I never not want to write. But if I want to do something else, or if something else sort of takes priority, or if I get excited about something, I will practice less, which is bad on the wanting to be a good penman side of things or a better penman side of things. But also, if it's forced, I know in myself I'm not going to do it. I do it when I want to do it, and luckily I want to do it all the time, so it's helpful.
What's your practice process besides drills? What are the things that you write? Because some people, write alphabet, some are just
Right.
writing text and stuff like this. So what's your process?
Most of the time, like I like signature writing. Really quick putting together ornamental signatures. So getting capitals and capital connections really clean, and just
Mhm.
cleaning the base forms of my ornamental penmanship. For correspondence or writing quotes for people or writing names. Anytime I do any writing, I want it to look nicer. So every time I sit down to practice, if it's what I'll consider like a serious practice session, sometimes I just have play sessions that sort of anything goes. But if it's a serious practice session, I'll pick like a portion of a stroke. And then that's basically all the drills are sort of guiding me towards cleaning up that, not even just a whole stroke. Sometimes it's just a piece of a stroke or a little segment of an oval that doesn't feel as comfortable all the time. I'll dedicate to that and then do the letter forms that utilize sort of that shape to try to sort of iron out any issues that I see in certain letters or that I feel more so than I see in certain letters.
So are there other calligraphers who are better in Spencerian than you?
Yeah, for
Yeah?
sure. Oh yeah,
Give me
definitely.
some names. Give me some names.
Like there's, I don't know all of the names of people. There's a very big group of Chinese calligraphers, Chinese penmen who are doing absolutely phenomenal work. Like Richie Wei is one of them. He's probably the main teacher out there, um, teaching people. There's O.P. Henry. He was one of Richie's students, doing incredible work. Let me try to think of calligraphers and penmen in the. Now I'm putting me on the spot. I'm not remembering names.
Oh,
Um,
come on. Just whatever names pop into your mind, you know.
Um, it's a really cool thing right now where, and I've said this to people recently in the past couple of years. I think specifically with penmanship, ornamental penmanship, we'll say, or like traditionally written quick Spencerian, it is closer today than I feel like it has been since the late 1800s to being as good as it was like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There is a
Mhm.
solid group of people that are practicing very hard. I'm very happy that some of them are my students. Some of them are not my students, and they're just sort of people that are sort of in the ornamental penmanship community has grown quite strong. Where just like in sports, if somebody one year runs faster, other people just the next year everybody's faster somehow. So
Mhm.
maybe with I sort of got to a level, I'm at a certain level, maybe that's pushed other people. There are younger penmen who are coming up doing incredible work. Like there's a good friend of mine on Instagram named Mike McCrudgington, and his ornamental penmanship that he's posting on his Instagram, it is beautiful. I don't know what all his pages look like, but because they'll post like specific words and stuff. But some of those specimens or some of those examples are, I mean, close to flawless. They're beautiful. Um, so there's lots of penmen that are doing really beautiful work. And then there's also, because in pointed pen there's Spencerian, then there's also like the business penmanship world there's a lot of penmen in that world that do very incredible work as well. So it's interesting. I don't know if that there's a best person, but there are certain people are best at certain things. I think in combining capitals, I could be potentially considered the top of that hill, maybe, but that's because I've dedicated more time to that. I haven't been as structured or focused. What's that?
I don't know.
That was fun.
It happened in the last, what? I don't know. It's something from Zoom. But
That's hilarious. Just a little thumb. I was like, okay, Milen likes what
yeah,
I'm saying right now.
is there
Cool.
something else? No? Oh, yeah.
Oh, can I do that too? Will it do it if I do it? No, it's got to be your webcam.
What?
That's
Okay,
surprise.
from now on, when you say something nice, I'll be like, I I think you have to hold your hand for a bit.
I don't know that. Well, I'm assuming it's your computer and your cam. I don't think mine will do it. I'll just make a heart. It won't do
What?
it. It's just you. You have the magic touch. That's awesome.
I'm the new Harry Potter.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so I think there are just people that like what makes like when I talk about Richie in China, what makes him so good is dedication to like practice and like probably like the drills and the letter forms and all that kind of stuff in his early days of practice. If I
Mhm.
was like in those early days more focused or more I guess just zeroed in um on actual good practice and less playtime, I think I would be better today. But I probably wouldn't be as good at the sort of playful, crazy, goofy stuff that I do as I am.
Okay.
So what I lack in like discipline and minute perfection, I kind of make up in the other realms, I guess. Maybe.
You mentioned already like few times. What is the difference between the Spencerian and business penmanship?
So business penmanship is just unshaded. That's like Palmer method and whatnot. It's basically what came after Spencerian existed. When they, if you take the shades and a lot of the sort of ornamental aspect of Spencerian out of Spencerian, you get business penmanship. It's a different capital letters. The lowercase letters are very similar, but there's just no shades, and it ended up being what was taught in schools for the longest time. Just basically non-ornamental, made or designed to be written really fast, really clean, really crisp and legible. Whereas then Spencerian, that's sort of when business penmanship became a thing. That's when Spencerian sort of went into the realm of artistic and flourishy and whatnot.
Is the Palmer like easier to learn?
I think so, yes. Like a lot of the old books, most of the old books, even in ornamental penmanship, will teach you to get better at business penmanship first, and
Okay.
then learn Spencerian or ornamental penmanship. I can't say you have to do it that way because I didn't. I'm not. I don't do a lot of business penmanship. I wanted to go straight to shades and straight to that stuff because that's what I liked.
Mhm.
But if you think of just like writing in you got your front to back and side to side. With business penmanship, it's just that. So you have your movement, your flowing forms, but then with Spencerian and ornamental penmanship, you start adding in the next dimension of with your weights and stuff. So that's just one extra thing. So if you imagine mastering business penmanship, you've basically mastered control with a pen, pretty much. Then all you have to do is, with your eye, learn some new forms and learn how to place the shades where you want them, versus learning the control of the pen in all angles and up and down all at the same time.
Is there a specific paper which works better for those kinds of scripts?
You
Or
mean like a brand of paper or something like that?
like I don't know, maybe you have a favorite paper which you prefer writing on.
I do. The paper I use is called Via Smooth. It's
Okay.
VIA Smooth. The main reason I use it is it's like Rhodia. I love. I use Rhodia as my main practicing paper for a lot of times, specifically the Rhodia R, the creamy paper, because it's super smooth, super nice. But as I practiced, I like having a slight bit more tooth, a little bit more texture, not a lot, but a little bit more texture in my paper. So I found this, I believe it's Mohawk paper makes it, but Via Smooth, which I could buy in reams of 500. I got sick of, I don't like that I have to buy Rhodia in one pad at a time. If I could buy if I could buy a ream of 500 Rhodia, I would definitely have some. I always have Rhodia around anyways, but I like a little bit more tooth because it forces me to have to not get lazy with my hairline, and I like to feel what I'm writing. Sometimes if it gets too smooth, it can feel like I'm just skating on ice and you can lose control. But
Mhm.
that being said, I also love Rhodia. I like really smooth paper. Anything toothier than the Via Smooth that I use, um, I probably wouldn't enjoy writing with just because the nibs that I use are incredibly sharp and I sharpen them to make them even sharper. So I need a pretty smooth paper.
Besides Spencerian, are you able to write any other scripts?
Yes, I don't very often. Um, I can do like I have, I guess through Iampith I have certificates in Engrosser script or copperplate. I can do like black letter, that stuff. I I don't show a lot of that.
Yeah.
I can do a lot more than I guess than what people see me do. Um, for no real reason other than I enjoy doing ornamental penmanship more. But same, like
Mhm.
I've taken tons of workshops in basically all of the calligraphic styles from many incredible penmen, like foundational hand. I'm not as good as italic, but I can do italic. Unshul, I've always had a soft spot. I love Unshul. I think it's
And
beautiful.
I think it's also easy.
Well, yeah, it's well, and this is so. This is where, and what I'm gonna say right now. I don't want it to sound like I'm poo-pooing on these scripts because I think they're beautiful and they're amazing and they're glorious. And I cannot do them to the level of so many calligraphers who are incredible at them. But because ornamental penmanship is so hard,
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm drawn to practice. Because when I do ornamental penmanship, it it looks good, but never is it like nothing I've ever written is as good as the old books from like the 1800s and whatnot, the old specimens. I don't think anybody on the planet writes as good as what we're getting close now, but getting to that level, it's a level that I still have yet to reach, and maybe I won't reach it, maybe I will. Maybe the odd, maybe one or two things I've written have come quite close, but whereas if I do like an unchul or something, because it's slower, because I can control the form and I can go slow and like built up letter forms, I can go and like touch things up. It's less about that like if like an ability like doing a sport and more about this is just getting used to like where I have to perfect this form and whatnot, which I have less fun doing. I can
Mm-hmm.
do it, but because I don't do it as often, it's not something. If I was sitting next to you and you said, "Oh, make me a perfect unchul or black letter something," I couldn't because I would have to. Cool, give me a book. Like let me give me some time, and I can create you something that looks really nice. But I'm not Adam who can just throw out beautiful black all the stuff. Like I'm not a broad pen calligrapher. Can I do broad pen calligraphy at a slower sort of production time than the other calligraphers? Yes. I feel like I can, with the exception of Roman capitals, I feel like I can accomplish most scripts.
Okay.
Roman capitals is if I quit all calligraphic styles right now and dedicated to just like one, if I didn't do ornamental penmanship anymore, it would be Roman capitals. Because
Because it's
that's
the
the one,
hardest.
that's the thing. That's I'm a glutton for punishment. It's the hardest thing like of those of the calligraphic styles, so that's the one that I want to do. Same with ornamental penmanship is the hardest thing to me ever. So that's the one that I want to do. I'm drawn to those because whether I'm doing it good or not, like let's say I just sit down and write black letter or unchul or foundational or something and I write something and it's not perfect, it's not as good as I want it to be, but in writing that I know with like some time and practice, like I could do this really, really good. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with ornamental penmanship and like Roman capitals, I don't have that feeling. I think, oh crap, I have to practice like this, I have to grind. It's like learning the piano. I can't sit at the piano and just like fuddle my way through a song. So I want to learn the piano because it's really hard for like it's a super huge challenge. And that's what I like about learning things, basically. And it's also beautiful.
Yeah. You just said like the level of the penmanship is not even close to what it was in the 1800s. Like, why? What's the difference? Like, what were they making different, and what are people not able to do to achieve this
Um,
nowadays?
the main thing is just the time, basically. Like the penmen that were good at it back then, or like the masters back then, that was their life. Like they were at a desk and practicing, but all just doing work. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was their business. They sat and wrote for like probably 8 to 12 hours a day. Like this was their morning to night every single day, doing these strokes, writing these letters, making scrapbooks, doing all that stuff, like correspondence, teaching, reviewing, sending samples to students, all that stuff. So if somebody today could dedicate that much time, they would be that good. But just
Mm-hmm.
in today's world, there's not many people that can sacrifice that amount of time or that, to be honest, have that amount of like dedication. It was normal back then. I mean,
Yeah.
even the existence of social media, there's no setting up cameras. That's time where you should be practicing. There's no making a post. That's time when you should be practicing because those guys were writing nonstop and they all learned it in school, like from a young age. There were like grade 3 or 4 kids that could write better than most not ornamental penmanship, and I won't say most of us, but on like average, their writing was incredible because they learned it in school and they drilled it in school by the people who were the best ornamental penmen. So we're not worse because we can't get that good. We're just worse because we have less time to dedicate to it. And it is, well, ornamental penmanship specifically, I will speak, is insanely difficult to do that precise and that clean. Then there are like other aspects, like the nibs today aren't quite as good. They're good, but they're not quite as good as they were back then. Or like the sizing that was used in paper back then probably use chemicals and stuff, so they don't size paper today the way they used to. So our hairlines and our inks can't produce exactly the same stuff. But that's sort of we can get over those hurdles for the most part by modifying our tools and whatnot. So what it mainly comes down to is time. Just doing the work and not stopping for years and years and years because we don't have the time.
Yeah. Well, that's funny, and like I never thought about it in this way, but yeah, I guess you're right.
Well, if we think like you think of say like rocking and what's the right term? Engravers or people who are doing like Roman capitals again. We'll go back to that. That never went away at any point. So if there's like an old artisan who's still doing it, or he's old and he's about to like pass away, his children probably learn the craft with him and run the studio, and he probably learned it from his grandfather. And there was like not a ton of people, but there was always people like doing it and fully teaching it. With ornamental penmanship, with the advent of like the typewriter and just sort of the way the world changed, it all but like disappeared for a lot of years. So a lot of people, like most of the penmen today, even the older ones, never got to train with like any of the greats. So a lot of what we're doing is guesswork. I've never seen anybody from the golden age of penmanship in the late 1800s, early 1900s do like rapid movement ornamental penmanship. I've never seen it. So I'm guessing how they did it. I think our guesses are pretty good, but there's a couple people, like a few people alive today that trained with like the students of some of the great masters, or like some of the older gentlemen like Michael Saul trained with one of the old great masters, but that like connection is very it stopped for a number of years. Even like Spencerian in general, Michael Saul was the one that brought it back. It was basically all gone till he sort of revived it to the world. And then since he revived it, I feel like it's been like steadily growing again. But there was a gap there where a lot of those, they're not secrets, but just a lot of that sort of passed down knowledge and skill kind of it just got lost. And I could be wrong when I assume that, but that's sort of my guess. Because I would pay anything to be able to sit down even for like 10 minutes with one of those old penmen from the 1800s. Even like one video of watching them write a stroke would teach me loads, because it's like I said, it's guesswork. We think we know by deciphering the books and whatnot, but we don't actually know.
If some magic happens right now and they give you opportunity for this to happen, which one will you choose?
It's a good question. I would probably choose Earl Lupfer, E.A. Lupfer.
Okay.
For the I think most people, if you ask that question, would probably what this script is based off. People would say Mataraz, because he was like, he's probably one of the most famous and the flashiest and whatnot. But the reason I would probably choose Lupfer is he was so just ingrained in like the teaching and the running and whatnot of the Zenarian, and his own style. If you basically take artistic expression, which sounds horrible, if you take like creativity out of ornamental penmanship, the base letter forms that we build everything off of look like that's basically Lupfer's script. His script could be called boring, but it's perfect. Like it's exact. So if you could learn, and I study his work probably more than anybody's when I'm trying to do precise work, because if I can, sorry, there's sirens in the background. Hopefully you can't hear them, or hopefully they go away soon. But if I could do the script like precise and clean the way he does it, then anything that I add on top of that is my own voice. Whereas if I learn to do it like Mataraz, my writing's going to look like Mataraz's. If I learn to do it like H.P. Behrensmeyer's, it's going to look like Behrensmeyer's or any other penman. And they all had their own like little specific thing. And Lupfers look like Lupfers, but Lupfers just look clean. So if I learn to be Lupfer, and then if I let myself be on top of that, it won't look like Mataraz. It'll look like Mike Ward. And that's what I want. I want people to see my writing, and I want it to look like me, not like any of the other guys.
What's the one thing that people have the hardest time to learn about Spencerian when you're teaching them?
The biggest, I guess the first hurdle that most people have to jump over is the fact that you need a light hand. That kills a lot of people. Like people are so used to gripping their pen like super hard and whatnot. And it's admittedly like it's something that's sort of almost necessary in other calligraphic styles. Like it can be difficult to do broad pen scripts if you don't have like a pretty firm, good grip and control of your pen. But because the hairlines have to be so fine and the upstrokes, like the nib is so sharp, and if you want to get a nice flowing script, you can't have any extra tension there or any extra weight at all, or you'll snap into the page and things like that. You'll dig in, or your tines will snap. Or you won't have a good hairline, and you just won't have a good contrast between the shade and the hairline. So that's probably the first hurdle. And then if it's what I sort of teach the most now is movement writing, with teaching people to add the fluidity to their writing. That's easily the biggest hurdle that any calligrapher who wants to do pointed penmanship at a relatively quick speed has to get over. Is it's hard to go fast if you don't have a light hand, and also just like going for it, because we want to control ourselves. We want to, because we all know, especially like a good calligrapher, like if I was sitting down at a desk with you, you know that you could pick up a pen and you could draw slowly a good form. If I showed you a form, there's a really, really good chance that you could replicate it very close to what I do. But now, if we try to make that form in a fraction of a second, that's harder. But what makes it even harder is your internal need, because calligraphers, we want to have control of everything. We want it to be perfect. So it's our internal need to make it perfect or to control it, but you can't control it. It's like a pitcher can't learn to throw a baseball by like, I'm going to learn to throw a knuckleball, and you can't learn to do it like that. You have to just throw thousands of really bad throws until you slowly start to dial it in. So getting over that gap of actually going quickly, not snagging the page, and then when it's quickly, but it's messy, then we start to gain the control back. I would say that's probably the hardest thing for most people.
Were you in, I guess you were actually involved with dancing before calligraphy, right?
Yeah, so I've been a dancer my entire life. My sisters forced me to take a class when I was 9 years old, and I fell in love with it. It took over my life for most of my life. And then I became, I guess, a professional dancer probably around the age of 16, 17 when I started teaching. And then a number of years after that, moved to Los Angeles and TVs, movies, all of that jazz. So dance has been my life since the beginning.
What kind of dancing?
Primarily hip hop is what I did in Los Angeles. So anytime like a movie or a TV show has like a club scene, or all Disney kid TV shows have like that dance scene in the cafeteria or whatnot. Those are where I look young. So when I first got to Los Angeles, it's a lot of Disney and Nickelodeon type stuff. Just dancing in the background or dancing like behind artists at like award shows and things like that. Yeah, primarily hip hop. I'm trained in ballet, jazz, contemporary, and tap and whatnot. Tap is what I do primarily now.
Yeah.
But I stopped doing a lot of the ballet and jazz and those more technical styles when I got to Los Angeles, just because certain parts of my body and lack of flexibility aren't necessarily built for them. And hip hop was just a very natural transition. I like the music, I like the movement, so it was good for me. So that was my life for most of my life.
You think anything from the dancing helped you developing your calligraphy skills?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because it's movement. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
probably less when I was writing slow, and probably less if I was doing like if I'm doing um like old English or black letter or something like that, probably less because it's less about like moving. But when I
Mm-hmm.
do ornamental penmanship, it's like I never had to teach myself to have like a flat back and have my body at rest. Because as a dancer, I always want my body to be at rest, so posture is always super important. I have bad posture when I type, but when I write, it's perfect because
Huh.
it has to be to I'm trained that way now. Whereas when I write, this is just my muscles are they're like flat back muscles that I would have used when I was a dancer. And then just the fluidity and connecting. There's a little bit in you could say timing. Like my one class that I teach called the art of movement writing. I teach it with a metronome, or I also speak in rhythms, and the class has to write at the tempo that I speak. So the whole thing, basically like a class, I count it like I would count my tap classes that I teach now. And it's taught at a quick enough speed that it forces all of the students to go fast. Because as we say, that's the biggest hurdle is going fast. I can't tell you how many times before creating this class you would tell a group of students, like you do your warm-ups and your ovals are super quick and you go, you're gonna go super fast, super fast, super fast, and then the artist will go down super fast, and then they'll just start going slow because they want to control it. So in order to keep people going quickly, I force them by using a metronome and I count it. So we're counting downstrokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have to keep up with me. It's part of the class. And many people break nibs and people have cried because it's a hard good calligraphers will come in and everything you create when you're learning that process will be garbage. I have a whole sort of disclaimer at the beginning of class where it's a repeat after me thing and everybody has to give themselves permission to just be crappy because nothing you create that day, if you've never trained this stuff for a long time, is going to be good. So once we take that edge off of we've given ourselves permission to be garbage, we just go and we create garbage. And then eventually that garbage becomes beautiful.
Few months ago in the summer, I was on a residential class with Paul Antonio, 3 days intensive copper plate. The second day I cried.
It
Seriously.
happens.
Uh, it's because I'm self-taught, and I mean, Paul is a very good friend of mine, but he's a good teacher and very strict. And at one point, I had to think about 5, 6 different things, and I got so frustrated. I was like, man, I'm shit, I'm not good.
Because yeah, everything then just builds up like, oh, I gotta have this down, I gotta have this rotated. When I get to this point, I gotta do this. I can't think about all these things. It's too
Yeah,
much.
my back, breathing, this and this. Wow, it was crazy. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. So how many different calligraphy classes are you teaching actually?
Right now, none. I haven't. The only classes that I've had for quite a while now are like I work with Mont Blanc and I do some online classes with them, but
Mm-hmm.
they're hour-long sessions where I just did one last week, or was it earlier this week? I'm losing track of time. Um, on just basics of flourishing, basically. And then
Mm-hmm.
I did a Spencerian one, a 4-part Spencerian class, and then I did a class on Unchel, but a variation of Unchel that I call Funchel. Um, or because I take out for the calligraphers watching this video, I apologize because it's not proper Unchel. But if you imagine taking like Unchel and removing like the proper like ductus like stroke order, and if you just wrote the letters like with a broad fountain pen, so not a super sharp dip pen, but just like a broad nib, and then you just write Unchel forms with sort of whatever tool. It's just that. It's just casual Unchel, but I call it Funchel. So we just
Okay.
take the edge off. It's not Unchal because Unchal, I've learned Unchal and I can do proper Unchal, but this is meant to expose people who would never really be into calligraphy. But if you want to add a little bit of style to your writing, you don't have to learn a super, like a strict calligraphic style, I don't think. You can do a casual style. And then, in a perfect world, they'll want to learn the proper style, and then they can go take an actual Unchal class and learn, or get on YouTube and learn with the proper tools and that to do clean Unchal. So it's, some people will hate it. I think it's, I mean, I really enjoy it. I used to write, I used to address all my envelopes with it, with just a broad marker. I would just write in what I would call, back then I called it ghetto Unchal, but just a casual Unchal style.
Do you have any pictures of it on your Instagram?
There would be some on my Instagram somewhere. I can try to find some.
Okay, I'll try to find some.
It just
So,
looks like unrefined Unchal, basically. If you just imagine
mhm.
Unchal and then not super precise, that's basically what it is.
But is there any other reason that you're not teaching as much, or?
I've been really busy lately just with other life things.
Mm-hmm.
I work for a dance competition company and we're about to go on tour with that. So I've been very busy with that. The main class that people want me to teach these days is my movement writing class.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes me nervous with the online teaching is I can't see sort of the potential bad habits. If I can't see your arm, I don't know if your elbow's tucked in too much, or I can't see what your body's doing. So unlike a style, if I was teaching you something slow, then it doesn't matter to me as much um how your body's doing it. Like obviously I want you to be relaxed and whatnot, but because when you're writing slow, I think for the most part it's your eye that is learning how to crisp things up and where to put things, versus for my movement writing class, it's all about training the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
So a bad habit, if you get a bad habit, is really hard to lose because you're training that deep into how your muscle wants to work. So it's like if I was teaching a dancer and I taught them how to do something wrong, and then a year or two later I told them to change that, it'd be hard because their muscle structure is built to be comfortable doing this one thing. So if I can't see you, I don't know that you're not potentially getting a bad habit that will then like do the opposite of serve you like down the road. And then that's just a habit that then we have to break and rebuild. So I'm kind of trying to go get back into the realm of sort of in-person only classes for that type of stuff. Um, like I did online some during COVID, but not a ton. And I have had my like signature design type classes online before, but I'm trying to take most of the writing classes back to in person or one-on-one type of stuff at some point again.
Wow, that's
So right now I have
unfortunate.
no other classes. I don't have any courses or anything going on. Unfortunately, I have nothing to put
Yeah,
up.
no, that's very unfortunate because I was gonna ask you to do some class with calligraphy masters, but yeah, after all that you explained, it makes sense.
It's unfortunate. It's, and there are variations that I can teach, but what people want from me most,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could teach it and I could take people's money and they would get stuff from it, but I feel like holding off to actually be there is just more beneficial to the students in the long run. It's another one. Is it, do a thumbs up real quick? Is that what, is that the, no, how did the, I don't know what gets on that one. Oh, there it is. That's awesome.
Anyways, okay. What do you enjoy more, dancing or writing calligraphy? What brings you more satisfaction?
Um, these days, probably writing. That's such a hard question to answer because it depends on what mood I'm in. Like when I want
Okay.
to dance, all I want to do is dance. And when I want to write, all I want to do is write. when I want to fold origami, all I want to do is fold origami. So I've always lived very much. This is why, like earlier, when I said I take breaks and stuff quite often, because I've always just do what I want to do in that moment. Um, yeah, if I just woke up today and had nothing on my calendar, didn't have any work to do, no commissions, no anything, I would probably, my first instinct would be to sit down to pick up my pen and probably practice or write something.
Let's say now God comes to you and says you have to choose one of two for the rest of the life of your life. You cannot do one of them. What will you choose to do?
Oof. Probably these days, I think a number of years ago, I probably would have answered different, but these days, probably writing, I think. A win for the writing world.
Yes.
Just because I've gotten to a point with my writing where I can express myself really well with it.
Mhm.
So I can connect with people with it. And probably easier than in like the dance world. So I'm just thinking of like if somebody told me that I could only do one thing, what enables me the most opportunity to like be expressive and to share with people and whatnot. And I think these days, penmanship definitely takes that. I mean, with the like the community and whatnot that I've been building and stuff, it's the most expressive and the also probably there's something deep down where there's a lot of dance teachers and there's a lot of incredible dance teachers. There are a lot of penmanship instructors, but fewer.
Mhm.
So something is there where I feel like I have more to give with penmanship than I do with dance. Or what I have to give can't necessarily be given by as many other people in penmanship. So I feel like I want to share that because that's important. I like sharing. So
Cool. Cool. Besides teaching Spencerian, what are the other ways that you can monetize Spencerian script? Like, are you getting any commissions for Spencerian? Like, because with some scripts, I know you can do logo designs, you can do
yeah.
advertising, but what are the things that Spencerian can
There's been
do?
a couple opportunities for logo type stuff. Not a lot, but I think that's less because the opportunity isn't out there, and more so because I'm a horrible businessman.
Mm.
Um, and I don't really like even commissions. Could I do more commission work? Probably, but it's not something that I really put out as an opportunity for people to have. So if somebody messages me and say, "Hey, can you do such and such for me?" I will, or I like to if I have the time and whatnot. But it's not something that people know to come to me for. Um, I always say like I'm a calligrapher and I have a business, but I kind of sometimes feel like I don't have a calligraphy business. I'm a calligraphy instructor. I have a calligraphy or I have like a penmanship instructor business. Um, but as far as working as a calligrapher, I don't do a lot unless you count foiling.
Mm.
Um, that's sort of my version of a calligraphy business. And I say that all saying I would like to when I get some time. I'm trying to work on a structure because I would like to sort of create a market for more sort of commissions and stuff for ornamental penmanship and things like that. That is something that I've been trying to work on for a number of years to get that built as some like if somebody wants a calligraphy commission, they don't think of going to an ornamental penman. They think of, I mean, black letter, like other styles, come to the forefront first. I would
Mhm.
like to get a little more of commission work out there for not just myself, but for my students, so that they
Mhm.
have something to sort of strive towards or to potentially have a business opportunities. So there's that. But then because of foiling, that opened the doors for business and selling items for me, where then I didn't do writing commissions because all of my sort of commission work was in designing signatures to foil on leather for people. So there's
This,
that whole world.
I like how it naturally went in this direction because I was waiting you to finish to speak about the foil and it just came. So yeah, let's talk about it. Like, I try to, every time I share something from you, I try to keep reminding people because our days, yeah, our days, a lot
I
of
saw
people
that
are
in the last
doing.
video, and I appreciate that.
No, yeah, because I see like our days, many people do fold calligraphy, but I remember when nobody was doing it and you started doing it.
It's pretty cool. I take I guess a lot of pride in the volume of people that are now just it's part of their business. They do like engraving on site, they do foiling on site. It's a whole industry, for lack of a better term, for calligraphers like worldwide. Um, it's an industry for companies that make tools. If I
Yes.
was a good business, I should have made tool. I like it. I did have one for a bit, but it's something
Yeah.
that I probably didn't. I did. It that tool doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
But just because the company that made a new version of the tool that doesn't require the modifications that I had made to the original one. So
Mm-hmm.
now there's no need for a custom tool. It's I use one of the tools that they make. But now other companies have made these other tools, and it's just neat that that stuff exists because I experimented with foiling who knows how many years ago when I started sort of experimenting to make that work. It's pretty neat. It's cool.
Yeah, but how did it all started? Like,
Okay, so I had a shoe business once upon a time.
okay,
Yeah. I used to I don't have any within reach. I could run and grab some, but I when I lived in Los Angeles, I had a custom shoe painting business. Basically, I would people would buy Nikes or Jordans or shoes, give them to me, or I would purchase them for them, and then customize them with some kind of design, logo, character, whatever, what have you. I would custom design them, custom paint them with special paints that are formulated for leather and whatnot. Prep the shoe, paint the shoe, and whatnot. And then it was the whole business of mine that I did a lot of it. It was a that community has also grown quite a bit. I don't do it as much anymore. Um, but I custom painted shoes. And in that, I was experimenting with burning shoes. So I would take something like a Nike, and Nike has a print called like cement print. So the gray or like elephant skin type of print. And I would burn that print into a non-elephant print or cement print shoe and then repaint over it so it looked like a factory custom shoe from Nike. We would get those patterns, and then we would burn like crocodile skin or whatever random like paisley pattern I would burn into suedes and things like that. So I would customize shoes with burning. I was one of the I probably first shoe customizers that did that kind of customizing. And then this was before I did any penmanship at all. And then when I started into the penmanship world, I started burning um, calligraphy designs onto leather. I was just experimenting. I picked up like just scraps of leather from a leather shop, and I just got my wood burner pen that I use for shoes, and I was just burning calligraphy designs. They're some of the first things that I ever posted on Instagram, where it's like burned designs on leather. And then somebody, I don't remember who at one point mentioned, might have been my friend Bailey, mentioned it'd be cool if you could get gold in there, if you could like gild it, like how a company like stamps with foiling, how they foil a logo on a purse or a bag or something. I didn't know anything about printing foil. I knew about gilding just through calligraphy and whatnot. My very first experiment with leather, because I knew very little about adhering gold to things that weren't paper. I was silly enough that I actually tried to take a wood burning pen and like burn gold onto like actual gold leaf onto a shoe, which obviously didn't work. It would have to use some form of size to glue it on there. Which I know that now, but that's the experiments were like, I wonder, I have gold leaf, I have my wood burner, maybe like this. Because I'd seen like foiling machines before, but I didn't know I didn't know if that was gold leaf or whatnot.
yeah, yeah.
So then I got a wood burner, the same wood burner that I had, that I could lower the temperature. I went to an old print shop, or this print shop that I went to at the time. They had a bunch of filing cabinets in the back of they had got them from an older print shop that had shut down, and there was just drawers and drawers of mixed random printing foil. And that's when I learned what printing foil was, and then how it gets adhered on to materials with like a heated up brass die. So that's when I learned, oh, this is what I need to do things by hand. So I went in, I brought my wood burner, and I just spent like, I don't remember how many hours in the back of their shop just randomly trying different foils because they had like hundreds and hundreds of rolls of foil, little ones, different colors, different adhesives, testing all of them just to see which ones worked, which ones didn't. And then in the end, I had like a few golds and a few different colors that they let me then take home. And that became my first stock of what I used for foiling. So then I just started experimenting, just burning designs. And I learned that I could foil what temperatures I needed. And it's neat. That sort of process, the tools that I used evolved, the process evolved, even like as early as like a year ago, knew like I've changed the way that I foil versus how I used to. Or you can see the videos I post now have an extra sheet of like mylar that goes in between the heat tool and the foil. And that just makes it the final product is slightly shinier than it was before. Or working on like certain synthetic materials, you won't get because the foil will get like a pucker as the tool's being pulled through, and if you have another sheet of mylar over top, that reduces that a little bit. So sorry, I'm going on and on.
No,
It's been
no.
it just basically it was an evolving process, and at one point when it became like a almost a thing, I would be in bed and it could be like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm falling asleep and I would get an idea like, oh, I wonder if that would work. And I would just get out of bed and go to my desk and like fire on the burner and just experiment and be like, oh, okay, no, that didn't work. Or, oh, that totally worked. This is a new technique. Or grinding the tips of the tool that I used at the time to get different shapes and what temperatures and things I needed to make different shapes work. So it's just another snowball thing like before. It just the idea, somebody sparked it, and then all of my energy went into that for years until somebody said, hey, would you want to fly to Germany and do a foiling tour? And I said yes. So like no business model, no anything. It just people came to me and asked if I would do it, and I said yes.
So
And now many people are doing it, which is cool.
have you done workshops about this?
No, it's something I would like to. The main reason I never did, like back in the day, I was thinking about it just because everybody needs a tool,
Mm-hmm.
and the specific, like the tool I use is relatively expensive.
How
So
much is it?
probably around, don't quote me on this number, but it's 300 and something US dollars is the tool that I
Okay.
use. It is overkill, but it's like if you think of like a good engraving system or something like that, it's an investment.
Mm-hmm.
It is again because I want leather burning. I also want wood burning, and the low temperature is what's required for foil. So it covers all the bases of everything I need. It's basically the industry's top or best wood burning tool is what I use now. They make a cheaper tool. I don't know exactly how much that is that they've sent me one and I've tested it and it works great. But there are other tools now that I'm like there's USB ones that companies make that I'm not familiar with. I don't know how they work, but people do good work with them, so I assume they work good.
No, but why don't you reach out to the company for the expensive one and ask them to give you like 5 or 10 so you are able to teach people and you'll be promoting them?
This is something I potentially could do. Because teaching classes would be fun. It just also makes me nervous because it's dangerous. Just because it's a hot thing, so I don't want people to burn themselves. But it's something that I thought about it for a long time, and then the idea just kind of got taken out of my brain, and then it hasn't really been put back in there since. Because foiling itself, I think foiling is relatively easy. The
Mm-hmm.
hard part about foiling is that every material that you're foiling is different. Like
Mm-hmm.
because I primarily do leather, every piece of leather is different. Even if it comes from from one side of the animal or one side of the hide to the other one, the material can be different depending on how it was tanned and the toughness and everything. So there's those variables are what make it difficult, but to understand it, it's pretty easy, I think.
Do you have any dreams or goals that are connected with calligraphy, like that you want something that you want to achieve or skill that you want to reach?
Ooh. I mean, as far as skill, I can say I want to be able to. I would love if I could do a piece of work, and just like a name, a signature, in a perfect world, an alphabet, a full alphabet run in ornamental penmanship. To me, is one of the hardest things because you just can't mess up all the way A to Z. I mean, it's what all calligraphers do, and it's always. I mean, that's you have on your back wall. It's what people want. You get the piece of like the this is so and so's alphabet, so and so's alphabet, and they're awesome. I want to. I can do relatively good ones, but they're not as good as I want them to be yet. So to be able to do a full run alphabet, take that piece of paper, put it in one of the old scrapbooks from the 1800s, and to have somebody not recognize it as out of place in that old book would be sort of that would be a really awesome, call that a goal. That would be wicked.
I think this can happen even now. I'm pretty sure a lot of people won't make the difference. It's
A
just
lot
you
of
like
people won't know. So here, I'll rephrase then. If I look through the book, I mean, aside from recognizing that it's mine, I would want somebody with my eye to not recognize that it doesn't belong or that it's a modern specimen versus a book full of vintage specimens. If I could make my be like good enough that it disappears in the vintage specimens, that would just mean that my hand is basically as good as it or as good as it can get at that point.
So are you ever satisfied with your work, or just your standards are way too high?
No, this is the funny thing because I my answer to your question is gonna feel wrong, but I'm always satisfied with my work. Um, this is I know that seems super backwards. I am super 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 picky, and I always 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 will want more from my work,
Mm-hmm.
but never do I do work that makes me feel like it's not good enough. I don't know if that's the right
So you
words.
never not like your work? Like
Yeah,
you always like your work?
because my work is I'm creating it. Like it could be messed up and I can redo it. So like if I mess up or I get a nib snap or something, it could be better. But there's something cool about what comes out of my hand in that moment. Good, like good, bad, whatever. It's what it is. It's why I started doing like my YouTube live videos because on Instagram, people could assume that I only do immaculate, beautiful, perfect work. And I know some calligraphers, and I feel bad that people feel this way, but some calligraphers that really gets it hard for calligraphers because then they feel like they always have to do only perfect work.
Yes,
And
yes.
somehow I feel like I've dodged that bullet where my non-perfect work is just as sort of well, maybe not just as special, but it it's part of the reason why I have perfect work. So I don't
Hmm.
hide or shy behind my non-perfect work because it if it's not good enough, like if it's not like as I've said, nothing I've ever written is technically good enough. And my standards are stupid high. I'm insanely critical of my own work. But everything I write isn't bad. If it's not perfect, it teaches me how I can get better. So everything I do gives me something that for me to work on, which is exciting. That's what I like doing. If I got to the top, I'd probably be bored because then there's no I mean the reason I want to learn I want to get better at Roman capitals because there's you don't really get perfect. It's
Hmm.
so hard. There's always something to strive for. So that's probably the best way. Everything that I do, even when I mess up, if I do a nib snap, if I'm writing and I get a big snap and it splashes across the page, I could be angry and be like, "Ah, oh, I suck." Or that nib snap just taught me that I stopped when I was paying attention to this portion of the letter. I stopped having a light hand. So I now know on this stroke of the letter, I need to practice to maintain my light hand in that point. So I no longer get a nib snap in that point. So that it's a building block then. It's
But
not
you have to
garbage.
be very self-conscious about stuff like this. I mean, when you say it, it sounds very easy, but to be like, I understand what you mean, but you know, I try to explain for the people because this is not an easy thing that you're
It's not
speaking of.
normal. It's I've learned in talking with people that it's not normal. And if I'm being 100% honest with you, like on my YouTube videos and in person at conventions and here talking with you, I try to maintain a very casual, not sort of strict essence or vibe when I'm around penmanship and around my art and everything, because it's very easy for an artist, for any artist, to slip into that. It's a danger zone of you get stuck needing to only make good stuff, and we're all very hard on ourselves. So there's somehow, and I don't know what in my life got me to the point where I can do this, or if I even do it as good as I say I do it, but it's the goal, is taking the critique and liking the critique, but taking the negative aspect of the critique out. The critique is just then a building block. So it doesn't mean that my writing is bad. It just means that my writing can be better, which is exciting. So it's more so a mentality shift, I guess, to keep things light. Because if
And
they're
it's
not
fun.
light, I won't enjoy it and I won't do it anymore. And then I'll just quit. If I feel like I suck at something, I'm gonna quit doing it. And I don't want to quit this because when I say to people fall in love with the process, this is what I love. This is why I talk so much when I'm in interviews and stuff like this, because I'm insanely passionate about this stuff and it's very fun for me. So if it ever becomes not fun, I won't want to do it. So I refuse to let it become not fun. That's like that's the the where I shall not go. It's never allowed to not be fun, basically.
This is so cool. Really like the way you think, man. And like I knew about your YouTube live sessions, but I didn't know what you explained about it, and I'm really happy about it because I've also discussed with some calligraphers on the podcast. I think it's really important people to show also bad work because of Instagram and all these social media, people's showing only the best. It fucks up the minds of people who are beginners and who want to advance because they see
It
only
would
good
just
work.
it would destroy all of my students. If I
Mm-hmm.
only showed or talked about the best, no student would feel like every student would feel like if I didn't talk about enjoying the writing and being goofy and whatnot with it, everybody would feel like their writing was garbage and they would quit. And that would be the worst thing in the world for me. I want people to love it whether they're good or not. So this is my way of, I guess, practicing what I preach. I put it out there and then people see it.
What about those YouTube sessions? How often are they going? How
So
long
when I'm
is
in
each one?
town, unfortunately, I travel a lot, so I'm out of
Mm-hmm.
town quite a bit. But when I'm here at my desk, every Tuesday night, Pacific Standard Time, every Tuesday night in Vancouver at 9 p.m., I go live. The shortest videos, I'm usually live till about 3 hours is usually the minimum. I usually go till just before midnight, or this is a
Ah,
if the stream hits midnight, I don't know if you know this, and people watching potentially don't know. If my stream, if I get distracted and I'm enjoying it so much that it goes longer than midnight, which often happens because I enjoy myself and I get lost, automatically all the lights in my studio shut down and a black light turns on, and I switch out to blacklight ink and I write on blacklight paper, and I changed the music to be more of like a club. It's like how a club turns from like a dinner, like a restaurant into a club when it hits like 10 o'clock at night or something. That's at midnight we turn into late night live where we then write with blacklight instead. So it's just like a little geeky fun thing when we hit midnight. My longest stream was 6 hours
okay.
so far, but on average they're between, I would say, 3 to 4 hours every
My
Tuesday night.
my longest was 24 hours.
24. Wow.
You know what was the
What were
worst
you
part?
doing?
You know what was the worst part about it?
What?
YouTube didn't save it. Like before, YouTube was saving stuff like this,
Right.
but now they save only stuff that is up to 12 hours. And when I did the 24 hours, I was exhausted.
Right.
I don't recommend it, but I was satisfied that I've done it. And when I realized that the video was not saved, I was like,
Oh, that sucks. Note to self, if I ever do a super long stream, I'll record it through OBS as well. And not just, I won't rely on YouTube.
yeah,
Wow.
YouTube until like up to
Under
12
12.
hours, it will save it. But
I was
longer than this.
debating, because I like doing long streams and I'm well aware that many people have asked me to change the time that I do the lives because it's not very convenient for East Coast people, people overseas. Like it's most of my like friends in calligraphy are asleep when I do the stream. So a lot of people can't actually be there. But I do the stream late at night for me when that's when I want to sit down and write. So I don't want it to feel like it's not a job. This is I want to sit down and relax on a Tuesday night. But I have been thinking of, I mean, you did a 24-hour stream. I would love to do a longer format stream with some form of charity or something to see like how long, because my energy won't run out. I can guarantee that right now. I'll keep going. Um, but I would love it to be more so than just me being on camera for a long time. I want it, if I can have some form of like purpose or charity or something that it's like a marathon thing that I do every year or who knows what. This is I'm now giving ideas that I haven't fully like planned out in my head, but I would love to do some form of longer stream like that with some kind of purpose. So if you have any ideas, shoot them my way. If you know a
Sure.
charity or somebody that would be into stuff like that.
I'll think about it. And also, you guys who are watching and listening, if you have any idea about Mike, drop them in the comments. I've also thought, because this live, which was 24 hours, I've done it on my personal channel, but I want to make one on Calligraphy Masters, again, 24 hours. But once it passed 12 hours, I'll stop the stream and I'll start a new one. So both of the parts are saved. And I have this idea, different calligraphers from the crew to join with me for like an hour, every hour to switch. Cool. So if you're up for something like this, it will be nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Honestly, it's like I don't know any calligraphers that are local here in Vancouver. The only time that I get to geek out with people in person is when I go to the Ampeth convention or when I go hang out with Adam in Berlin, basically. Those are like the two times that aside from like my YouTube videos, are the closest I get. I do that so I feel like I'm just around other people in the solitude of my own home. But yeah, anytime somebody wants to hang out and geek out and talk about penmanship, I'm always all in.
Well, probably it will take me another 2-3 years to catch up, but
That's the hard part. It's the schedule. Well, I'll be better. I'm working on it. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be on top of things a little bit more with that.
Okay, can you tell me like the best tip that you received that helped you the most in your calligraphy journey?
Oh, the best tip that I received.
Something that helped you the most.
There are so many little tidbits, but actually I'm gonna give one that wasn't actually given with I don't think anyways, wasn't given as with the intention of being like a tip to like help you. Can I give two?
Of course.
The first one is it's a silly thing, and this is one thing that I start all of my classes and sort of sessions with. And this is a tip from Michael Stahl, and this has nothing to do with like mentally going practice anything. It was something as simple as when you open your jar of ink, get in the habit of immediately cleaning the top of the rim and the inside of the lid. So you always clean the inside of the lid every single time. And it sounds like such a silly little thing, but it just, with the way it stops ink from getting all crummy in the top of our things, it's become, though silly, one of the like, it's now just habitual for me, and it's one of the most important things that I like to share with people and have do. So that's my silly one. But the other one that sort of changed mentality wise with me, and like I said, I don't think this was given with the intention of being like a calligraphy tip or like to help me in my journey, but it was Adam Tails one that said it. it was one of my first times in Berlin, might have been my first time there. And we just sat out and we were recording a video, and he wrote scriptorium in his writing, and I wrote Berlin underneath it in my penmanship. And we did like one of them, and I was not super happy with it. Like I wanted it to be, because it was for Instagram, I wanted it to be better. This is many years ago, so I cared more about Instagram than I do now back then. But I was a little caught up on it. I wanted to like redo it, and he just said like it's better finished, or better
Done. Done
finished,
is
better
better than
done than
perfect.
perfect, or something like that. And it's like boom, like that makes so much sense. And now if you think about like all the stuff that we're talking about, like sharing the bad stuff, blah blah blah, just putting the things out there, I don't know if that lent into my sort of relaxed vibe around all that stuff, but I remember that moment quite often. If I'm ever recording something, oh, you don't like that one? That's a thumbs down. If
This
I'm
is
ever
good.
recording a video where, like, obviously my signatures, I want to be perfect, so I'll record like 5 or 6 of them in a row and then post the best one. And it's easy because I'm posting it and I want it to be perfect. I'll record like, oh, one more, just one more, just one more. And then I'll have Adam's voice in my head. It's better done than perfect. I'm like, true, done. Edit it, get it out of here, get it out of my brain. The next one we'll just try to make it better. We'll grow better. So that sort of stopped me from getting so hung up on things needing to be perfect. So thanks,
Awesome.
Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Okay, bro. Like, I'm sure we can speak much more.
We can,
Like I love your passion. I love the way you think about calligraphy and you perceive it. But to be honest, it's like a bit later already.
it's late for
And
you. We've been
and
talking for a while now.
and it's not only this is my second podcast, and to be
Right.
honest, I'm a bit tired, so I want to wrap this podcast up. But anytime, of course, I'm always open, like to record another another one. Like I know you're busy, but just keep it in your head. If you have time, we can always record another episode. So
I'm down for that. We could do like a foiling one or something. We can do one targeted about specific things if you want.
yes, exactly. So, Mike, as I said, it was a huge pleasure finally to meet you. As I said, I loved your passion and the way you think about calligraphy. So, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your love with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for, I mean, creating Calligraphy Masters. It's dope. And happy
Uh,
anniversary. It's exciting.
thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Uh, Guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, a like will be much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. There will be links in the description to Mike's social and everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And as always, keep writing. Okay.